Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. The Honorable Examiner for this final examination. This special occasion, let me introduce myself. My name is Sarni Nur Bayani. I'm student of English Education Study Program IKIP SILIWANGI. First of all, I would like to thank to the examiner who given me an opportunity to present about my research paper with the title Developing of the Descriptive Text Using Podcast in Teaching Speaking. With the 5 content in this presentation consists of first is background of the research, second is objective of the research, third is methodology, fourth is result, and the last is conclusion. The first one is background of the research. There are 4 main points in the background of the research. The first one is learning English, speaking ability, media learning, and podcast. The first one is learning English. Nowadays, learning English is still attractive to every student in the classroom, especially of speaking English. Speaking English in the classroom, every student have an understanding about speaking English. According to Nana 1989, that essential for learning a language is acquire communicative competence implying communication. So, teaching speaking in the classroom must be developed based on students' needs best as possible. And the next is speaking ability. Speaking ability in the classroom is needed in the teaching and learning process. The speaking ability will support students to express their orally ideas. And the next is media learning. Media learning as a tool for the learning and studying in the classroom is growing rapidly in the learning so that it can be increase students' interest in class. The development of English language must be expanded, which is the media as a tool for learning in the classroom. And the last one is podcast. Since 2005, podcast could expand audio broadcast network through dissemination on the internet. The podcast can help us to develop audio recordings, for instance, development of pronunciation, vocabulary and learning activities, and also can help the teachers to develop the way of teaching. The use podcast can provide positive result of students in developing language education. There are many advantages to using of the podcast as a learning media. The next is objective of the research. There are 4 points of objective the research. The first one is the process. To elaborate the process in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking. And the next is to know the feasibility in the developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking. And the next is responses. To investigate students and teachers' responses toward in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking. And the last is to know the obstacle faced by researcher in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking. And the third one is the research method. This research using research and development. We can say that R&D. The first one is research design. This research use research and development or R&D as research method. Based on Sari 2010 state that the research and development is a method used to develop the product and to measure the effectiveness of the product. And the next is research subject and location. The subject of this research was consist of 30 students in SMPN in Margahayu. There are 4 preliminary consists of 5 students, and the main field testing is 25 students. The location of this research on Jalan Sadang number 184 in Margahayu Tengah. And the next is research procedure R&D. In this research paper or this presentation, the researcher was used by Sugiono steps. According to Sugiono in 2008, in Purnama 2016, there are several steps that must be considered from the research and development method. The first one is potential and problem, and the next is data collection. The next is product design and testing product, and the next is design revision. The next is design validation, and the next is revision product, and the next one is operational product testing, and the last one is final product of the product. And the last one is data analysis. We have to know that analysis of the research paper in this section is two main of the data analysis. There are questionnaire and interview. Questionnaire classified based on Guttman scale by Sugiono. He defines that Guttman scale is a measure instrument in the form of interval data which can be made score 1 and 0. And the next is interview data, to comparison based on the student's engagement with some question asked. And the next stage is the result of the research paper. There are to answer the first, second, and third and the last research question. The first one is the process. The first is discover, menu record system, descriptive text, and the students record result and the final result. The first is discover. There are many main points in discover. So the next is menu record section, and this section students will have downloaded the application. The name of application is Encore application. For students who do not have gadget, as a researcher provide relief by borrowing the application media. And the next, students will listen carefully to audio by researcher about client. And the next is during students listen the text, and the researcher was giving the text about the descriptive text, and then students pay attention to audio record and attention of the features of the speaking, example like vocabulary, pronunciation for audio through a podcast. And the next is after listening of the audio, the students discuss with their friends, and the student expected their ideas or opinions to discuss about the topic. In this section, students are expected to be more active and critical thinking. After students was given the opportunity to ask questions related to what has been discussed, at this stage students will ask questions if there are errors related to the materials and rules given by the researcher. After that, the students will retell speaking the descriptive text, descriptive text about the lion using a podcast. Through this, the student is having the record result. And the next section is a final result. This section is the result of students' audio, and the researcher will having saved and to share the audio to when the application or the other device. And the next stage is the feasibility. The design is assessed by validators who have understood the principles of language, media, and learning. There are three of validation experts. There are Miss Evie Kareviati, M.Pd, Miss Nai Supartini M.Hum, and the next is Miss Indri Masito S.Pd. There are lecturer of IKIP SILIWANGI and English teacher in SMPN in Margahayu. And the next is the result of validation by expert. This section, the researcher was got the first is supervisor 1 is the percentage 100%, and the category is without revision. And the next validator by supervisor 2 is the percentage 102.71%, and the category is without revision. And the next is by English teacher is the percentage of 100%, and the category is without revision. And the next stage is students' field testing result. There are 2 points of this research paper. The result of testing by students. There are one is preliminary field testing. The percentage of the result is 81.80%, and the category is the excellent. And the next is main field testing, and the percentage is 86.1%, and the category is excellent. And the next is obstacle faced by the researchers. There are 4 types of difficulties got by the researcher. The first one is looking for the references that have the same method for the study, and the percentage is 10%. And the next is arranging words that is not still optimal. And the next is the lack of students' responses. And the next of the type difficulties by researcher is distracted by students during research work taken. And the last stage is the conclusion. This stage by researcher have 4 the conclusion through this research paper. There are the first one is the process in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking through several stages that are following by Sugiono stage. And the next and the second of the conclusion through this research paper is the feasibility in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking based on the validation result by supervisor with a percentage 100% and 102.71% with the category of feasible to use without revision. And the next based on the result of validation by teacher with a percentage of 100% with the category of feasible to use without revision. And the next or the third conclusion is based on students and teachers' response in developing the descriptive text using podcast in teaching speaking. They are suitable for use and development. It can be seen from the students who feel interested in using the podcast as a learning in speaking. So it can be concluded that the proposed method this proposed the method can improve students' mastery in speaking. There are 4 points to be concluded the obstacle faced by researcher. The first one is looking for the references that have the same method for this study, and the next arranging words that is still not optimal, lack of students' responses, distracted by students during the research were taken. So there are of main ideas for this research paper. I would like to thank to the examiners for giving me to explain and present this presentation. I hope this presentation or this the material of the research paper can be interested by who has watching the video. And so There are for me. Thanks for attention. Thanks for watching. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.